Today, we're diving into one of the most important battles in history, the Battle of Midway. This was a fight that literally changed the entire course of World War II in the Pacific, and the most decisive part of it all happened in just a few unbelievable hours. So, how can one single battle really decide an entire war? I mean, it's a huge question, right? But that's exactly what historians say about Midway. To really get it, we need to zoom out and look at the situation across the vast Pacific Ocean. All right, let's set the scene. The year is 1942. It's only been 6 months since the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, and honestly, things are looking pretty bleak for the Allies. The Imperial Japanese Navy was just on a roll, conquering huge territories all across the Pacific. For the United States, it was a really tough spot. They were outnumbered and basically scrambling just to stop the bleeding. So Japan's top admiral, a guy named Yamamoto, he comes up with this plan to finish the job. Lure the last American ships into one final massive battle that would wipe them out for good. And the place he chose for this epic trap was a tiny little spot in the middle of nowhere called Midway. So you might be wondering, what even is an atoll? Well, just think of it as a small, ring-shaped island made of coral, usually with a calm lagoon in the center. It's really barely a speck of land in a gigantic ocean. So why on earth would anyone fight over this tiny dot on the map? It's all about location, location, location. For the US, Midway was like a critical gas station for its planes and a super important base for its submarines. And for Japan, capturing it would be the perfect launch pad to attack Hawaii all over again. The bottom line is, whoever controlled Midway controlled a massive chunk of the Pacific Ocean. The thing is, the US was totally outnumbered and outgunned. They needed an edge. Some kind of secret weapon. And you know what? They found one. Not in a factory, but in a quiet room filled with some absolutely brilliant minds. You see, back then, navies communicated using these incredibly complex secret codes to keep their plans hidden. Think of it like the ultimate secret messaging app of its day. The Japanese Navy used a particularly tough one called JN-25. It was designed to be, well, unbreakable. But here's the thing. Unbreakable is often just a challenge to the right people. A team of American codebreakers in Hawaii, working under the code name Station Hypo, had been working day and night and had managed to crack parts of it. They started piecing together chatter about a huge attack on a target called AF. They had a strong hunch it was Midway, but they had to be 100% certain. And this is where things get really clever. They came up with a genius plan. They had the base on Midway send out a fake radio message, not in code or anything, saying their fresh water system was broken. Then the codebreakers just listened. Sure enough, a few days later, they intercept a new Japanese message, and when they decoded it, it read, AF is low on fresh water. Bingo. They had them. The trap was set. Okay, so knowing where the attack would happen was one thing, but actually stopping it, that was a whole other problem. The American commander, Admiral Chester Nimitz, decided to take this massive risk and turn Japan's trap into a trap of his own. Just take a look at these numbers. I mean, seriously, the US was at a huge disadvantage. Fewer aircraft carriers, no battleships at all, and they were up against Japan's elite, battle-hardened pilots. On paper, this looks like a fight the Americans had no business winning. And the ships that mattered most in this fight were the aircraft carriers. These are basically giant floating airports. This was a new kind of war, you see. Controlling the sea now meant controlling the skies above it. And these ships were the absolute key to doing that. To even have a fighting chance, the US needed every single carrier it had. Problem was, one of them, the USS Yorktown, had been badly damaged in an earlier battle. They figured it would take 3 months to fix. But in one of the most incredible stories of the war, workers at Pearl Harbor got it patched up and ready to sail in just 72 hours. That miracle meant the Yorktown could join the fight. So the stage is set. The massive Japanese fleet is sailing toward Midway, expecting an easy win. The American fleet is hiding just over the horizon, waiting to spring its trap. What happened next would change absolutely everything in just 5 minutes. Here's a quick rundown of that morning. At dawn, Japan bombed the island itself. Then, American torpedo planes went in to attack the Japanese ships. But they flew in low and slow, and they got torn apart. It was a disaster for the US. But that failed attack forced the Japanese commander, Admiral Nagumo, to make a critical, fateful decision. He ordered the planes on his decks, which were armed with bombs for a second island attack, to be rearmed with torpedoes to deal with the American ships his scouts had just found. And this left his carrier decks in total chaos. This was the definition of a perfect storm. While all the Japanese fighter planes were down low, busy shooting at the American torpedo planes, a different group of American planes, dive bombers, arrived way up high, completely unnoticed. They looked down and saw the ultimate target. The American planes dove. In the span of about 5 minutes, bombs slammed into the Japanese carriers. Those decks, crowded with planes, fuel lines, and ammunition, just erupted into massive fireballs. In less time than it takes to listen to a couple of songs on your phone, 3 of Japan's 4 main carriers were turned into blazing wrecks. But the fight wasn't completely over. The last Japanese carrier, the Hiryu, fought back like crazy. Its planes found and crippled the USS Yorktown, the same ship that had just been miraculously repaired. But later that day, American planes found the Hiryu and finished the job. By the time the sun set, all 4 of Japan's powerful carriers were either sinking or had already sunk. The battle was just a stunning, unbelievable victory for the United States, but its impact, its true legacy, went so far beyond the ships that were sunk. It really did change the entire direction of the war. The final numbers here are pretty devastating, especially for Japan. They lost more than 10 times as many men. But the most crippling loss, the one they could never replace, was their hundreds of veteran pilots. These were the best of the best, and the Japanese Navy would never truly recover from losing them. So why does this one battle matter so much in the grand scheme of things? Well, before Midway, Japan was constantly on the attack. After Midway, they were permanently on defense. The whole balance of power in the Pacific just tipped over to the American side. And the battle proved once and for all that the age of the giant battleship was over. The aircraft carrier was now king of the seas. And beyond all the military strategy, the victory had this huge psychological impact. It gave so much hope to the American public and all the allies. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, winning the war didn't just feel possible, it suddenly felt inevitable. So, let's end with a final thought. This entire history-changing victory really hinged on cracking that one code. It really makes you wonder, if that clever little trick with the fake water message had never worked, how different would our world actually be today?